Hello everyone, I'm Giuseppe Gaiazzo from Silence+Other Sounds. In this video I'm going to demonstrate to you some of the functionalities of our latest library, Omen. So, just a few info before starting. Omen is a Kontakt library based on ritual voices and war chants. It features a wide variety of ancient vocal styles, for example Eastern Throat singing, and also Nordic styles like Kulning, and classical styles like baritone, tenor and soprano. It requires the full version of Kontakt 5.8 or above. The free Kontakt player is not supported. However, the sample folder is accessible, so you can use the featured WAV samples in any audio or video software. Another thing is that we have extended the intro sale for Omen until December 31st. So until then you will be able to purchase the library for $49 instead of $79. And you can also add at checkout further libraries at 33% discount. So in case you have already purchased Omen, you are watching this video to discover a little bit more said functionalities, and you want also the other discounted libraries, just drop me a message. So let's start and let's have a look at the first instrument featured in the library that is called vocal layers. So just a small a quick introduction about the concept behind this instrument. Basically, as the name suggests, vocal layers allow you to combine different layer of sounds in a flexible way. You have four sound sources, which can be selected from these four menus that you can see here, which are identical. And all these sound sources are organized in different categories. VD stays for vocal drones, which are mostly vocal sounds that sit in the lower register, mostly throat singing and baritone singing. Then we have sustained, which are basically long sustained tones, which are mostly in the middle and high register. Also we have phrases and textures. Textures are basically synthesized or manipulated pads which are obtained by processing the original sounds featured in the library. So as you can see, if we play something, so you have different sounds respectively mapped to the lower and the higher part of the keyboard. In this case, we have the sounds that are labeled as 1A and 1B, which are mapped on the blue part of the keyboard, the lower one, and the other two, which are 2A and 2B, which are mapped on the other side. However, you have a flexibility in regard to deciding which sound you want to map to which part of the keyboard. And so the first thing that I would like to spend a few words is this functionality here, this button that is called Manage Layers. So if you click on this one, we can see that we are currently in Layers Arrangement 1. This means that in this arrangement, sounds 1A and 1B are mapped and layered on the lower part of the keyboard, and 2A and 2B are mapped to the higher part of the keyboard. And that's something that you can see also by looking at these blue and light blue squares which appear around the volume sliders. However, if we change it to layer arrangement 2, and if I play, so we can hear that the tenor vocal layer that was previously on the higher part of the keyboard now has been mapped to the lower one. So with this layer arrangement 2, you have 1A, 1B and 2A on the left and 2B alone on the right. If we go to layer arrangement 3, then you can see that the higher part of the keyboard disappears and everything is mapped on the lower part. So all the four sources are mapped on the same part of the keyboard. So by having the option to decide which sound you want to have on which part of the keyboard, you have a lot of flexibility to experiment by blending the vocal layers, because that's actually the basic idea that lies behind the entire instrument. Give you the flexibility to experiment with sound and to go anywhere from sustained phrases or to also chorusque, let's say, effect that you can obtain by carefully layering specific sounds. Another thing that is worth to mention is this button here, auto trim, that is contained in the manage layer folder, let's say. And in order to explain why this button is here, I need to do a small introduction about the peculiarities of the actual sound that we have sampled. As I say, there is a lot of throat singing, which mostly sits in the lower part of the register, but also very, let's say, sort of chirping style, like for example, Kulning and other Eastern styles that we have recorded. And one common thing across all of these styles, in particular for throat singing, is that the extension is very, very limited in comparison, for example, to a soprano style or to a tenor style. A throat singer mostly stays in a range that is around one octave and a half. And that's something that can significantly change according to the actual singer. So in the specific case of throat singing, you have mostly a range that goes to G1 to B2. That's the maximum. And this is a lot because throat singing is a very physically demanding kind of style, because it requires to use the external vocal cords of the four that we have, that we usually do not use for talking or for speaking or for singing. And throat singing is exactly based on that, on activating these two external, let's say, vocal cords. So it's very, very demanding, and that's why it cannot be performed outside of this limited range, or one octave and a half. And so this is the first aspect. Another aspect is that as the choice was to close all of these vocal styles within the same instrument, you have some layers that have an extension and other layers that have another one. For example, you might have a throat singing layer that goes to G1 to G2, and on the top of that you might have, for example, a tenor layer that goes to, for example, E2 to E3. Okay, so they are not perfectly aligned. Their extreme are not aligned, and so we decided to introduce this button that's called auto trim, that very simply cuts, let's say, the overall range of the overlapped layer only to the keys where both layers are present. Okay. By default, it's always activated, because this helps you to have more consistency, because you don't hit a key where there is just one of the two layers and another one that features both. That can give some, weird inconsistency when you're playing, but however, you are free to deactivate it. For example, if I go back to layer arrangement 1, if I deactivate auto trim, you can see that the ranges extend. So here you have both throat singing layers. But if you move up to here, you have only one. This is more overtone singing rather than throat singing. So throat singing stops here. And then you have the overtone singing layer that is more extended. If you want them to sit exactly in the same range, you activate auto trim, which, as I say, is activated by default for all the patches. And so if I play this one, it has cut, okay, the layer that was exceeding. However, as I said, you are free to deactivate it as you want. Maybe that's exactly what you want. You might have on the same layer, some keys that have just one sound and other ones that have both. So you have a lot of flexibility in this regard. So this is a very, very quick explanation, because there was a lot of thinking, a lot of trial and error before this. So I'm doing my best to explain it to you very quickly. Other things that are worth to mention is that each one of these sounds has an independent volume, mute, and pan control. Okay, so if you want to have the sound more spread out, that covers more of the stereo image, you can pan the individual sources. Let's give it a try. Yeah, this is pretty extreme, and I think that you can particularly appreciate it if you are listening to this with headphones. Well, frankly, I prefer prefer to have the throat singing style in the middle and maybe move this sort of overtone series somewhere else. See your image. Okay. If we move to the edit panel, we can find individual controls that we have on each one of the the sounds. You have attack, release, low pass filter and high pass filter, LFO amount, where you want to assign the LFO, either to the high pass filter or the low pass filter, and the shape of the LFO and resonances for the filters as well. This is pretty straightforward, so I won't spend too much on this one. On this other screen here, that is called map, well, this one has mostly been thought in order to map the vocal ear instrument on an MPE controller. Omen is MPE compatible, and so by using this screen, if you own, for example, a Rolly Seaboard Rise that is being used as a reference to create this screen, you can easily map the previous parameters of volume, low pass filter, high pass filter, and LFO to the controls of the Rolly Seaboard. So this one might require a little bit more explanation, and is exactly the one that is featured in Maleventum 1. So I have a video on my channel that goes in detail about this aspect, and when I released Maleventum 1 year ago. So if you want to dig a little bit more into this functionality, into this MPE mapping functionality, I would recommend you to watch that video. And so for the FX section, we have basically a convolution reverb where you can choose from a number of acoustic, design, experimental sources, so that you can color the sound in a variety of ways. So I won't spend other words about this instrument, because it's actually 8 of them and I would like to cover each one of them, so I need to be quick. Oh, other two things that I forgot to mention is that you have a legato button that is independent for the low part and the high part of the keyboard. And then you can see that on this second part we have this shift back button, and this basically, as the name suggests, shifts back the second layer of 1 octave. As I said before, all of these styles sit in different ranges, so you might have that the sound that you select for the higher part of the keyboard might be inconveniently distant. There could be too much distance, okay, too many blank notes between the lower part of the keyboard and the higher one, and so by activating this one, it shifts back. Okay, so let's move to the second instrument. That is the rhythmic chants. Well, basically, as the name suggests, this is based on a number of of tempo synced phrases that you can combine in a variety of ways. You have low ones that we have defined as a rhythmic drone, and 2 sets of phrases that sit in the higher register. And the interesting thing is that you can decide in which root key you want your chant to be. You can see that there are no sharp notes here, but as all the samples are tempo synced with a high quality algorithm in Kontakt, you can, for example, if you are on G, if you want F sharp, just decrease the pitch of 1 semitone and you are there and the quality is not compromised. So let's have a listen. Okay. Okay, and for each one of these phrases, you have independent control of volume, low pass filter, resonance, and drive. While this can be interesting to experiment with drive, especially on the lower drones. You can also change the direction of the loop. Okay. And there are these three buttons here that are called half tempo that works independently for each one of the phrase sets, that very simply they halve the tempo of the corresponding phrase set. Well, this is interesting because I personally find that these war chants kind of thing work particularly well for lower tempos, okay, in anything between 60 and 90 BPM. Yeah, now currently we are at 120, so if I remove the half tempo, we have, you know, especially for some mixes, it might become, you know, too much, too cluttered. And so by halving the tempo, you have something more defined. And it's worth to mention that all these phrases have been recorded at 60 BPM. So once again, the time stretch algorithm in Kontakt is the high quality. So even if you go to extreme timings, for example, 60 or even 300, the quality is still preserved. Okay, this instrument does not have snapshots. So let's move to the following one, which is one of the two phrase builder featured in Omen. Here the concept is that you have this small number of this number of short syllable groups, one syllable, two syllable, three syllable groups, and that you can sequence by this you know, sort of sequencer here. So if you press B in the green key, you start the sequence. So you can decide which one of the group syllables you want to assign to each step. And also you have two voices, crew and single. And you can decide independently per step if you want either one or the other or both. And you can also decide the timing, okay, of the step. For example, if we select 1/4, you can also have control on the loop length. If you want just, for example, half of the whole space on the sequencer, or you can experiment with even number of steps to create, you know, interesting things. And you can also deactivate the loop. Leak here basically controls the amount of when you move from one step to the other one, how much you want the previous step to bleed into the following one. So if we set to 0, so according to the timing at which you are working and the phrase that you are creating, you might want to experiment with this one to create a more realistic effect. A nice feature here is that you can have these phrases either straight, like in this case on the 4, or in triplets. So let's give it a try, and maybe let's decrease the tempo a little bit. Sorry, let's get back to 1/2. So let's go back to 1/4. And let's set the loop to the half. It's basically the same phrase that is timed differently in the Kontakt engine. You have also low pass filter and resonance. You can change the pitch, reverb, and also you have a randomize button to globally randomize all the values within each of the menus of the steps. So So this phrase builder here has been called war because, as you can hear, the style is very screamy and aggressive. But also you have a second one, which is almost identical to this one, that is called sorcery, that is based on a more, let's say, you know, evocative and magic kind of style. So let's have a listen. So the concept is exactly the same one. So you have these 16 steps, two possible voices here that you can either, you know, activate or deactivate, timing, and instead of leak, here we have set a volume per syllable, because we have found that with this style, it works better to work independently on the volume of each one of the steps rather than having a global leak control. But you have the same loop, activate, deactivate button, length, randomize, etc. Let's move to the next one. Yeah, this one is an instrumental one-shot sound effects called vocal horns. Basically, they are, if you know or if you own Maleventum 1, it's similar to the to the kind of sound, the horn blast that you can find in Maleventum 1, but the difference here is that we have created them just with vocal samples. So they sound pretty low, so let's have a listen. So the idea here was to actually record not low voices, but very high pitched voices, and then manipulating them in a variety of ways with extreme repitching or morphing in order to create something that was a hybrid version between a voice and a horn sound. So it's pretty similar to the instrument that you find in Maleventum 1, where you have all of these controls that you can see here are per sample. So you can set low pass filter, high pass filter, resonance, LFO, etc. Independently for each sample. Also attack and release, volume and pitch. And also all of these samples, they are mapped to the corresponding root key. So for example, if I hit F sharp here or C sharp, okay, if I hear the corresponding so you don't have to mess to find a root key of the sample, because if you hit that key, that's the root key. But you might find convenient to, you might have the need to, you might need to tune simultaneously all the samples to the same root key, and then that's when the global pitch button comes in help, because if you activate it, you can select the root key to which you want all the samples in the patch to be tuned. For example, F, we suddenly have all the samples tuned to F. Etc. And here you can do the fine-tuning, also including the sharp notes. So this can be very convenient because, especially for underscores, for trailers, you can hear all these different kind of blast horning sounds, you know, all tuned to the same key. So this is pretty straightforward. And you also have a control for the octaves, where you can simultaneously switch the octaves in the range from -2 to +2 for all the samples. So let's close global pitch. The important thing is that global pitch does not have memory of the settings that you do once that you open. Once that you go back, all the pitches for all the samples are restored as they were. Other thing is that again, independently for each sample, you can set if you want to play them straight or reverse. Okay, now there is a small clarification, because if I set reverse, you know, nothing happens, and that's because in reverse, the start of the sample, which once again is independent per sample, becomes the also in this case becomes the start of the sample in reverse. So you have to move it in order to hear the reverse sample. Okay. You have also a convolution reverb master effects, which affects independently all the sample. And also you got these small windows here that is called set global controls. For example, let's assume that you want to simultaneously change the low pass filter to all of the samples. So rather than going sample by sample and changing the low pass filter, just select low pass filter from here and this control becomes global. So if I change it, now all the samples are affected. Yeah, let's make also resonance global. Okay, so let's activate these two. Well, there is also a convenient thing that you can activate simultaneously reverse for all of the samples. So this instrument is way more geared towards sound design, to start from interesting sounds but allowing you to create your own. Another interesting functionality that you find here, that probably you have found if you own Maleventum 2 or the mystery boxes, is extend. So if I select, let's say, this sample, if I play extend, you see that the color of the virtual keyboard changes, and you can play this sample chromatically along this range. Also reverse the sample. Maybe let's add a little bit of LFO. Pretty straightforward. So let's move forward and let's have a look at these instruments. There are actually two instruments that are very similar. One is called GROWLS and Whisper, the other one is called sentences, which are basically spoken sentences with a very similar set of control to the vocal horns. So, sorry. If I move to the other one. So these are spoken sentences in this made-up language. Actually, you might hear that many things in Maleventum, in Omen, remind Old Norse language, but you know, it's not a real language. The singers that have been involved have been incredible because they have created their own made-up languages that sort of resembles that kind of Nordic ancient languages. And finally, the last instrument is called bonus percussions. It's basically a set of different percussion loops divided in low drums, mid drums, and high drums. So let's have a quick listen. Okay, let's increase a little bit the speed. So there is a lot of interesting stuff that we have sampled, from Celtic bow drum to tamorra, which is a specific kind of drum peculiar of southern Italy, where I come from. But also in the mid-register you have water drums, udu, and those sort of shakers, bells, Tibetan bells, shells, whatever in the high register. Actually, some of them are not even, let's say, proper instruments, like in the case of shells. Well, they were supposed to be a piece of furniture, to be honest, but I purchased them because they were interesting. They had this sort of interesting jingling sound, and that's it. They sit very well with the overall vibe of the library. So guys, I tried to be as quick as I could because there is a lot to cover actually, and as you see, I didn't play that much. There are other two videos, particularly one. This is a sound walkthrough that is not me speaking at all, but just me playing the presets, so you can watch that if you want to make your mind about the kind of sound of Omen if you still don't know about it. This one wanted to be a little bit more in detail about some functionalities. I wanted to highlight the managed layer functionality in the vocal layers instrument, because I think that has been a little bit overlooked, but there has been a lot of thinking and trial and error that is going in that in order to give the flexibility to layer and manipulate the sounds in a flexible way. So I think it's all. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and once again, Omen is in intro price of $49 until December 31st, plus 32% discount on additional library. So if you are an owner of Omen, if you want these libraries, just send me a message and I sort a link for you. Otherwise, you have plenty of time until December 31st. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.